So the second try. Again, my name is Klaus Frankenberger. It's been a great pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to be at the Palazzo Vecchio. It's wonderful to be in Florence, and it's wonderful to be in Italy. I'm proud that my paper is associated with this event and with the institution now for the fifth year. It gives us great pleasure, and as I said, it's an honor for us to be part of this event. It gives me even greater pleasure, and I'm proud to be with you, Mr. President, on the stage, the President of Romania for roughly 4.5 years now. You have been a mayor of the city of Sibiu, Hermannstadt. You have been a national politician and now a strong voice in the European arena. The President Iohannis, is a staunch defender of the independence of the legal system, and he is an unwavering fighter against corruption, if I may say this as an outside observer. In 3 weeks, we have the European elections. Some people say this is Europe's rendezvous with destiny. I don't know if this is a little bit too much of drama, it's over-dramatized, but it tells you what is at stake. The world out there is nasty, turbulent, voters are volatile. There are ugly social forces gnawing at the social fabrics of our societies. International challenges, demographic, geoeconomic, technological, environmental. So there's a lot out there. People feel threatened by change and by the plethora of changes. And I hope you, Mr. President, will help us chart a way out of this plethora of insecurity and concern of the people. This event today deals with democracy, one of the key elements of our form of governments. And the previous session explicitly asked the question, is democracy, is there concern for democracy? I would like to start this conversation and pass the question on to you. Do we have to be concerned with our way of democracy? Is it under attack? Is it under threat by the illiberal forces out there, by voters' alienation?
Thank you. Let me start by answering. You know, our democracy is not under threat. But before I elaborate a little bit on this, let me say good morning, buongiorno. Thank you for the very warm welcome here. I had the occasion, together with the mayor, to visit this extraordinarily beautiful building here, and I think this shows, in fact, a significant part of our common heritage. And it is not so much about the color or about the space, it's about daring. Our history was led by people who dared more. So let's go back to that. And if we dare more, we will prevail. No, I do not believe that our democracy is under threat. But yes, our democracy is under stress. And in Romania, we have a very complicated internal situation. And quite often people come and ask me, well, is democracy in Romania under threat? Is it endangered? Is the society in danger? And they say no, but we have a very lively democracy. And I think this is what we have in Europe. We have upcoming elections, and a lot of politicians fear these elections because populists will win a lot of votes. Eurosceptics are on the rise, but this should not scare us. This should encourage us, the politicians who believe in Europe, in integration in Europe, in a strong Europe. It should make us become even stronger and find ways to convince the Europeans that we have a good future and that we, the politicians, know how to build that future. So definitely, democracy is not under threat, but we have to be stronger and better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is our good news, and I also take the first lesson away. We need courage to move forward. This may be a banality, but still, it's an important message. Second, we need to reduce stress. You say democracy is not under stress, but still, see, in my national parliament, we have about 100 hard-right members now in the German Bundestag. This doesn't give me no pleasure at all, and I don't think this is a normal situation. How can we reduce the concerns of the people or those anxieties that fuel the rise of populists and neo-nationalists? That it cannot be disputed that both populism and neo-nationalism has at least reached new levels of political significance in many countries.
As you said in your opening statement, we have multiple crises in Europe. Brexit, migration, sort of unemployment, border security. Terrorism is a threat which became more and more inflicting on our societies. And many others we don't even mention anymore, the economic threats, globalization, divergent approaches if it comes to free trade and so on and so forth. So people do hear in the news that we have problems. They hear about great changes. They feel that they are not so important anymore, and all this creates insecurity. Now, if we really want to fight insecurity, or if we want to make our Europeans optimistic again, we have to go to the basis of this. I mean, all these crises together, what do they trigger inside a citizen of the old Europe or of the new Europe? Does it trigger just fear of the future? Does it trigger existential fears? Does it trigger fears linked to security? Or does it trigger fear of losing our democracy? Does it trigger fear of losing our common European values? Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. But as I have been asked this question quite often, let me say right from the start that in the old Europe and in the new Europe, the fears are not identical. And this has to be taken into account. If we look at old Europe, Western Europe, I think if it comes to the basics, people fear that they will lose what they have. They fear that tomorrow they will have less than today. If we go to the new Europe, former Eastern countries, it's not the same. People in Eastern Europe rather fear that they will be left behind. They fear that they will not have tomorrow what the old Europe has today. So it's quite different, and this makes it virtually impossible to treat everything in the same way. So we have to find local, regional, not only answers, we have to find solutions, because otherwise our citizens will not believe us. So if it comes to what we have to do to be credible, we have to come up with projects for the future. And this is why I believe that the upcoming summit in Sibiu, which will be held next week, interesting enough, exactly on the 9th of May, Day of Europe. This is not a coincidence. It was intended to be like this. This summit is very important because it is maybe the first time we have a summit dedicated to the future of Europe. Future of Europe. Of course, we hear a lot of phrases quite often. We hear a lot of politicians talking about the future of Europe. We hear a lot of politicians saying we have to be close to the citizen again. We have to react to the citizens' needs. Well, this sounds very good, but what is it? Well, this is what we are trying to find. What is it? What do we have to actually do? What do we have actually to create to give our citizens back their optimism, hope for future, and action for future? Because if we don't act, if we just complain, we will lose it. We will lose everything. And I believe in the European Union. I do not want to lose it. I want to make it stronger. I want to make it better prepared for the future. And I want to make it resilient. No matter what comes, we have to deal with it, but I want to make sure that we know how to deal with it.
Thank you for this wonderful, optimistic interpretation. I take away this as the second lessons of our little conversation here. Do not exclude the people, politically, socially, and economically, because they're then easy prey for the scapegoats and put all the blame on the EU. So when I understand you correctly, Mr. President, you say Romania is a lively debate, but there are no signs that some elements, some parts of the government system, the judicial system, is under threat by forces that are on the corruption side a little bit. Is all okay? You are the bulwark against taken over by certain elements in your country?
Well, maybe yes, maybe no. We'll see that. The history book will tell us if I managed it or not, but I'm certainly trying. The situation is very complicated in Romania. I don't want to paint it more pinkish than it is in reality. We have the independence of justice under threat. We have populistic approaches. We have all kind of complicated situations, and if we talk about the architecture of our political system, we have something we call a hard cohabitation between the president and the governing majority. So this all sounds matter-of-factly, but it is really very complicated, and it is stressing for the citizens, for the public systems, and I think that we will have to have very soon a clear answer from our citizens, and we will have, because we have now European elections, and in parallel I called for public vote for referendum. We will have presidential elections in November this year, and next year we will have parliamentary elections. So the Romanians will come with answers for the situation. And I'm very optimistic that they will come up with the right answer, but that's something we will see after we have our results. The fact that societies are in turmoil, that democracy is under stress and populism on the rise is something we have to see, and we have to react to it. But the reaction cannot be of the same type. Populists become popular, as the word says, because they come up with very simple answers for very complicated problems, but they never deliver. But as we have our democracy, it takes one mandate, at least, till the society reacts and says, well, they promised, they didn't deliver, so we will not elect them again. This is why the political parties, the established political parties, have to come up with real answers for really complicated questions and with good projects. The only thing which will not function is imitating the populists. If we imitate the populists, then of course we will become like them, not they like us. And this is not going to be a solution for any of our problem. So see the problem, tackle it, come up with a project and put it into practice. This is what I understand that a politician has to do, and this is what I tried ever since I entered politics in the year 2000. Create projects, put them into practice, tell people, look, this was the problem, this was my project, this is what I've done.
And if I may add, don't be shy of political dialogues and debate with your political opponents.
Well, things have to be discussed, and you have to talk about it. You have to talk about projects, but you also have to talk about results. And if I may say, this is one of the major issues where the European Union failed. The European Union is a huge, positive, very good project, very strong project, and we achieved so much. The European Union has an impact on each of your life and each of the European citizens' life, and a positive impact, a continuous positive impact. Every research shows that the Union led to a better life, to a safer life, to security in Europe. But guess what? More often than not, we forget to tell the Europeans about this. We concentrate on the crisis and forget about the positive results. We talk without end about, for instance, Brexit. This is the theme. We talk about Brexit for 3 years now. Well, it is a problem, of course, and we have to sort it out. But during these years, we forgot to talk about the economic results, about the single market, about the progress we made, about competitivity in Europe, about the future of Europe. If we continue to talk only about the crisis and the threats and not about the solutions, people will be scared. And this is not what we want to do.
I would think most, if not all, people in this room would strongly subscribe to every word you just said. But then still the question is here, why is it so easy, if the EU is so good for us, so important, or in terms of security, in terms of economic welfare and so forth, commerce, travel, or mobility, labor mobility for most of us, if not all. Why is it so easy then to demonize the EU? Why is it so easy to bash those who are associated with you, including the chattering classes, including myself? Why is it so easy to demonize the EU and bring attraction out there, out of this room, for example?
I have two major answers to this, or two major reasons, plus a lot of secondary reasons, which I will not mention because it will lead us too far. One of the reasons you, as a journalist, know perfectly well, and fact is that almost no European citizen knows personally or meets personally European politicians. Just a few people meet a few politicians directly. Most Europeans get their information through the media, and this is very good. We have a free press. Apropos, today I think is the day of the free press, so who's from the media? Congratulations. But the media has certain rules. One of those is, unfortunately, good news is no news. Bad news is sensation. So if you open a newspaper, a TV, whatever, sometimes you hear good news, but most times you hear about a crisis, a flood, a bombing, an uprising, about something difficult, threatening crisis. Not so often you hear about, for instance, the single market has been growing and created a better state of the union through a better competitivity. You don't hear that on the news. So that's one thing. This doesn't mean that we have to change the media. We just have to change the way we politicians depict things, how we create the image. If we manage to create sort of a positive image, it will be used by the media. The second problem are the politicians themselves. You and I and most of you probably know politicians who go to Brussels and say, everything's fine. We have a good union, we have a strong union, and we will continue. But then elections come up and they go home. And the elector asks, well, Mr. Politician, why didn't you do whatever? Why didn't you construct that road? And the politicians say, well, those from Brussels didn't let me. So blaming the union at home is very common. And as long as we have, not everybody's doing this, but as long as we have a lot of politicians who say, if we meet among politicians, the union is good, and then they go home and say, the union is not so good, or the union did not help us, or it's the union fault, of course, people become unsecure and ask, well, what's happening if our politician says the union creates problem for my country, for my community, then this is a problem. So we not only have to create projects and to design our future, we have, as politicians, to be quite honest and say, okay, if the union created an opportunity and we managed to move things in the right direction, we have to say that. But if we fail with the project, we have to say, well, sorry, it was not a good project, or I didn't know how to put it into practice, but not always try to blame the Brussels establishment. They have their flaws, no matter what we talk, but we don't have to blame them for everything.
The good news is that we find that the interest of our readers, of television viewers in my country, in European affairs and European issues is increasing quite dramatically. So this has been since the euro, the debt crisis, but this has not gone away. I have to say
that's a very good news.
I have to say a word to the organizers here. There's something wrong with that clock. It runs down much too fast. So you must
be broken.
Reset it somehow. 2 days ago, actually, on May 1st, we celebrated the 15th anniversary of the admission of 10 countries to the EU. Your country and Bulgaria followed a few years thereafter. By all means, enlargement, in my judgment, has been a success. Has been a success. And I would not dispute it for a second. Nevertheless, we see something what politicians, journalists like myself call enlargement fatigue. Again, this is also not disputable that this exists. In your judgment, Mr. President, what is the way forward when we look at the Western Balkan countries?
Well, you start talking about the enlargement. I think this was a major step for my country, or the major step for my country over the last decades, and it was certainly a major positive step. And this is how I see enlargement, the last waves of enlargement. They not only improved the situation for the new countries, it also, the enlargement also was significant progress for the Union, for old Europe. So if people say, well, you know, accession was good for your country, but then I answer, okay, it was good for your country too. It was good for both countries because it made the Union bigger, stronger, and more competitive. So we have to continue. We have to continue the enlargement. We have the Western Balkans waiting to be accepted. We have to make our union not only larger, but we have to make it stronger. And by making it stronger, I do not understand only making its economy stronger. I also understand making its security better, making its procedures easier for the Europeans, and having a better integration. You see, we have in Europe two different approaches among politicians. Some, and I admit I'm one of those, say we have to go towards a stronger integration, a better integration, and make the Union stronger in itself, then it will be strong towards the outside too, and can become, for instance, a strong global actor. Others say, no, we don't need that. We need to keep our sovereignty. We need to keep our national competencies at home and work together on certain projects. That's not my opinion, but I admit there are a lot of relevant European politicians having this approach. So this is the ongoing discussion now about the architecture and about the future of Europe. Do we have to be stronger together, or do we have to be one near the other and not integrated? So if you ask me, I'm pro-integration, and I think this is the path for a stronger Europe. Being better integrated means that if we accept new members, we have to fully integrate them too, and this is the way how I see the Union becoming stronger.
I'm sure you told the British Prime Minister your view that staying together is better than being alone and weaker. I'm not sure, I don't want to ask you about your views on the Brexit, and if it's going to happen at all, who knows. But what did we learn? What did the rest of the EU 27, learn from the vote of the British, and particularly the English voters in 2016? Have we done anything to review a reform agenda? What is the lessons that we need to learn from Brexit?
Well, one lesson we certainly have to learn from Brexit is that we have to give the Europeans a feeling of security, of safety, and that they matter. This is important nowadays. We do not have any more societies where people don't care so much if they matter or not. Today, people want to matter. They want their vote to count, to be important. And this is also part of what I see the future of the Union. Being closer to the citizens does not necessarily mean physically closer. I can meet a lot of people, but I will never be in a position to meet everybody. But on the other hand, Europeans want to have a strong connection with the politicians that lead the Union. Having a strong connection means voting. So we need more positions up for voting. We have to give the European citizens the possibility to vote directly for important positions. For the time being, none of the positions we have, leading positions in the European Union, is voted by the people. It's an indirect democracy we have, and I think this is one of the problems we face now. This was probably part of the problem with the Brexit, because those people said, well, what do we control? They didn't feel that they controlled what's happening in their own country. Of course, this is linked to what we discussed before. We managed to put into practice so many projects, but we didn't talk about those projects. We didn't show the people what we did, how we did it, and what's the next step. We did not explain where the Union wants to go. It is true, we have a lot of regulations, but most of them are so technical that the citizens don't care. They don't understand these regulations, despite the fact that they are important. So we have to talk more about the future, more about what each citizen can do and why the vote of each citizen counts. This is, in my opinion, making a stronger link, relinking the politicians to the Europeans.
As our time is about to be up now, I would like to move one step further onto the international arena. What is, in your view, the greatest challenge faces the EU? Is it Russia's hybrid activities, Russia's aggressiveness in Eastern Europe? Is it America's disruption and America First policies undermining Western coherence? Or is it China's geopolitical and particularly geoeconomic assertiveness in the world?
Well, I think everything is important. It's obvious that as Europeans, we have to deal with Russia. Russia is our neighbor. We have to deal with Russia. It's obvious that we have to come to terms if it comes to trade with the United States, because the United States is our most important partner, and this is not only in economics, it's in security. We have to think about NATO and about what we did together and what we can do together. NATO is the strongest alliance ever. So we have to come to terms. We have to find ways to deal with China, and so on and so forth. So we have to deal with all these issues. It's obvious that the world is evolving from a bipolar global situation from the Cold War to a multipolar situation. And guess what? I really want the Union to be an important actor. I want the Union to be one of the important poles in a multipolar world. And this is right now not the case. Unfortunately, the Union is extremely strong economically. But if it comes to world politics, our voice is not strong enough. We still have a weak voice. And this is what I believe has to change dramatically. The European Union really has to become a global actor, starting from its obviously strong economic position and building on this. So we have a pretty long path to go till we become a relevant global actor again, but we can do it and we should do it.
This is a wonderful final statement. I will not add anything to it other than simply saying maybe it's really true that this is the time when Europe has a rendezvous with its destiny. Please join me in thanking President Johannes for wonderful insights, optimistic and hopeful remarks. Thank you very much, Mr. President.